My name is Aaron Pike, and I worked nights at Hollow Creek Mall for 3 years. If you've ever been inside, you know the place. Built in the late 70s, most of it looks like it hasn't been touched since. Fading carpet in strange geometric patterns, flickering neon lights, half the store's empty, the other half barely surviving. Management called it historic. Most people just called it dying. Still, people came during the day, and when they left, I came in. The mall was mine from midnight until 6. Just me, a set of keys, a radio that only half worked, and the security booth with its wall of grainy cameras. I thought it would be the easiest job I'd ever had. I was wrong. The escalators. The first thing I noticed was the escalators. Every night, almost like clockwork at 2 a.m., they would come alive. No power surge, no reason, just a groaning mechanical cough before the steps began rattling up and down. I'd stand at the bottom, staring at the empty metal stairs carrying invisible passengers. They'd run for about 3 minutes, then die again. When I mentioned it, maintenance told me the wiring was old but fine. Management shrugged. As long as it doesn't break, don't worry. But I worried. I worried because once, when I checked the security feed, I thought I saw shapes riding them. Just silhouettes, blurry, as if the camera couldn't quite focus. And when I blinked, they were gone. The mannequins. The mannequins were next. Wilkins Department Store was our last anchor tenant, and it had more mannequins than customers. They stood like pale skeletons under the fluorescent lights, draped in clothes no one wanted. Sometimes, when I walked through on my rounds, I'd notice they'd shifted. A head turned the wrong way. A hand lifted. One time I found one leaning against the display glass, its blank face pressed flat as if it were watching the hallway outside. I told myself I was imagining it. Sleep deprivation. Too much coffee. But deep down, I knew better. The whispers. It was maybe 4 months in when I heard the whispers. I'd be walking past the shuttered food court when I'd catch them, dozens of voices overlapping, too faint to understand. They always seemed to come from just around the corner, just out of reach. The first night it happened, I followed them. I thought maybe a homeless guy had gotten inside. But when I turned the corner, all I found were empty tables and chairs. My flashlight beam caught the McDonald's sign buzzing faintly, but that was all. The whispers cut off instantly, as if whoever was speaking had known I'd arrived. I stopped chasing them after that. The blackout 6 months in, the mall lost power one night. It was sudden. 1 second I was sipping stale coffee in the booth, and the next, everything went black. Even the emergency lights failed. I've never heard silence like that before. No buzzing lights, no air vents humming, just suffocating dark. I pulled out my flashlight, but the beam only stretched a few feet, like the dark itself was swallowing it. I started walking toward the generator room, my footsteps echoing too loudly. Halfway there, I saw movement, figures, dozens of them, at the far end of the hall. Too tall, too thin, and standing perfectly still. I froze. My light flickered across them, and in the brief glow I saw that they weren't people. They were mannequins. All of them. Lined up in a crowd where they hadn't been before. When the power came back 30 seconds later, they were gone. The new camera. A year into the job, we got a new camera system. The resolution was sharper, clearer. No more blurry shapes, no more static. At least, that's what they promised. That first night, I sat in the booth, staring at the feeds. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Just empty hallways, just as they should be. Then, around 3 a.m., I noticed something on camera 12, the children's play area. A figure was standing by the carousel, a man in dark clothing, completely still. I called over the radio, "Burke, you out there?" Burke was the only other guard on duty, but he worked the perimeter. No answer. I switched to camera 13, a different angle. The man wasn't there. Back to camera 12, gone. I leaned closer to the monitors. My reflection looked pale and distorted in the glass. Then I realized something that made my stomach drop. The figure had been standing in the exact same spot as my reflection in the booth. The locked door. There's one place in Hollow Creek Mall no one talks about, the basement. It's not on the official blueprints, not really. Just a heavy metal door tucked behind the loading docks. I found it by accident, and my keys didn't open it. When I asked management, they brushed me off. Old storage, don't worry about it. But I did worry, because some nights when I walked past, I could hear noises behind it. Not movement exactly, more like breathing. Slow, steady, and too deep to be human. Once I pressed my ear against the cold steel. A voice whispered from the other side, "Not yet." I didn't go near that door again. The last shift. It was my third year when things escalated. Burke quit suddenly. No notice, no explanation. That left me alone for 2 weeks straight. The first few nights were fine, just me and the cameras. But on the fourth night, something changed. The feed showed the mall as it should be, empty. But when I stepped out of the booth, I wasn't alone. Shadows clung to the corners of the hallways. Mannequins lined the walls where none had been before. The whispers followed me no matter where I went. And the escalators never stopped running. I tried to leave, but every exit door was chained shut from the outside. My keys didn't work. My radio only hissed. My phone showed no signal. When I returned to the booth, the monitors no longer showed the mall. They showed me. Me walking down hallways I hadn't entered yet. Me opening doors I hadn't touched. And then, finally, me standing in the booth, staring into the camera with dead eyes. But it wasn't me. I was behind the glass, watching. The truth. The last thing I remember is sitting in the booth, gripping the radio so hard my knuckles cracked. The monitors flickered. One by one, the feed switched to the basement door. It was open. Something crawled out. Tall, thin, faceless, its body bending in ways that bones shouldn't bend. It walked the hall slowly, patiently, heading toward the booth. I shut my eyes. I didn't want to see it reach me. When I opened them again, it was morning. Sunlight spilled into the mall. Everything was normal. The escalators were silent. The mannequins were back in their places. I quit that day. But sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the whispers again. I see myself in places I haven't been yet. And I know, deep down, that Hollow Creek Mall never let me leave. It just let me believe I did. My name is Claire Doran, and for almost 4 years, I worked as a night nurse at St. Augustine's Hospital. If you've ever been in a hospital after midnight, you know the feeling. Sterile white walls, the smell of disinfectant that clings to your skin, and silence so deep that every squeak of your shoes feels like a scream. Hospitals are meant to heal, but at night they become something else entirely. Something hollow, something haunted. The patient, who wasn't there. It started with a routine chart check. I was walking down Ward C around 1:30 a.m. when I saw the red call light blinking above room 409. I sighed. Half our patients were insomniacs or just lonely and pressed the button for company. I pushed the door open, whispering, "Mr. Langford? You rang?" The bed was empty, sheets folded perfectly. The room smelled faintly of bleach, freshly cleaned. No IV drip, no personal items, nothing. But the monitor beside the bed was on. Vital signs, heart rate, blood pressure, steady and alive. I stepped closer, confused. The heart rate ticked at 72 beats per minute. Respiration, 14. The monitor was reading someone who wasn't there. Then the call button on the bed clicked by itself. The red light above the door blinked again. The hallway shadows. We all joked about the hallway shadow. Every hospital has one. A trick of the light at the far end of a corridor, or a dark figure you think you see just as you turn the corner. But at St. Augustine's, it wasn't a joke. Around 3 a.m., the halls grew darker, even with the fluorescence buzzing overhead. That's when you'd see him. A man-shaped shadow, tall and hunched, always at the edge of your vision. He never moved when you looked straight at him, only when you weren't watching. Once, while I was refilling a cart, I caught sight of him standing right outside the nursery. I dropped everything and ran. When I burst through the door, the cribs were still, the babies asleep. The shadow was gone. But the next morning, the head nurse told me the security cameras had glitched at exactly 3:04 a.m., a solid 2-minute blackout. No footage, no explanation. Room 6B. There was one room we never used, 6B. It was sealed off after a patient hung himself from the ceiling vent a decade ago. Supposedly they cleaned it, repainted it, even blessed it. But something lingered. You could tell because patients admitted to nearby rooms always complained. "I hear crying in the walls," they'd say. "Someone's begging." One man swore someone knocked on his bathroom mirror 3 nights in a row. Staff avoided that wing unless we had to, but sometimes at night, the door to 6B would be open, just cracked, as if inviting me in. I never stepped inside, not once. The elevator. Our elevators had a mind of their own, but one in particular, the service lift by the morgue, was wrong. No matter what button you pressed, sometimes it would stop at the basement. The doors would open, and cold air would rush in, carrying the sharp scent of formaldehyde. One night, I wrote it down by mistake. The basement was supposed to be locked, but the door slid open into total darkness. I stepped out, just 1 foot, and the doors tried to close on me. Inside that darkness, I swear I heard gurney wheels squeaking. Then faintly, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I slammed the door close button until my fingers hurt. On the last, code blue. It all came to a head on my last shift. It was 4:12 a.m. when the overhead speakers blared, "Code blue, room 409. My stomach dropped. Room 409, the empty one. I ran anyway. My sneakers squeaked down the corridor as the alarm echoed. When I had pushed the door open, the bed wasn't empty anymore. A man was lying there, pale, skeletal, tubes snaking from his arms. His chest rose and fell shallowly, but his eyes were wide open, staring straight at me. The monitor screamed, "Flatline." I froze. No code team came. No one else heard the alarm. Just me. The man opened his mouth. His voice was wet, rasping, like air escaping from a punctured lung. "You shouldn't have stayed this long." The lights flickered. The walls seemed to breathe. And then every call light in the ward went off at once. Dozens of rooms flashing red, alarms screaming in chorus. I ran. Leaving St. Augustine's, I don't remember much after that, just sprinting down the hall, through the double doors, into the parking lot. My car felt like the only safe place in the world. The next morning, I quit. No notice, no explanation. I just never went back. But last week, I got a voicemail. A woman's voice, static-filled, like the call came from far away. She said, "Code Blue, room 409. I was 22 when I took the overnight shift at Redwood Gas and Mart, a fading 24-hour station that clung like a dying insect to the edge of Highway 16. The pay was crap. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry bees, and the coffee tasted like it had been filtered through an oil rag. But when you're young and broke, the night shift feels like easy money. Mop once, sell smokes, make change, and stay awake until the sun crawls up. That's what I thought, anyway. But Redwood wasn't like other gas stations. I didn't know it when I signed the contract, but Redwood had rules. And if you wanted to make it through the night, you followed them, the rules. My manager, Carl, handed me a laminated card on my first day. 4 simple instructions typed in bold black letters. 1. Never go outside between 2:30 and 3 a.m. 2. If someone asks for a bathroom key after midnight, tell them it's out of order. 3. If the phone rings more than once, don't answer. 4. If you see a man in a black hat at pump 3, lock the doors and hide. I snorted when I read them. What is this? Some kind of prank? Carl didn't laugh. His eyes were bloodshot, tired, like someone who hadn't slept a real night in years. Do yourself a favor, kid. Don't test the rules. He slapped the card on the counter and left me to my first shift. Quiet hours. For the first week, nothing happened. The nights were long stretches of silence, broken by the occasional trucker buying coffee or a college kid grabbing cigarettes. The highway itself felt dead. Cars would vanish into the trees and never come back. The darkness out there wasn't the kind you get in the city, where neon signs and traffic spill a faint glow. This was the kind that swallowed your headlights, made the forest look endless, bottomless, like a mouth waiting to close. I told myself the rules were just a way to spook new hires, some local tradition, but I kept that laminated card under the register anyway, because around Redwood, even silence felt wrong. The first test, the bathroom. Knock, it happened on my 5th shift. Just after midnight, a man wandered in. Mid-40s, denim jacket, smelled faintly of gasoline. He bought a soda, then leaned on the counter. "Bathroom key?" he asked. My hand almost went for the hook behind me where the key hung. Then I remembered rule number 2. "Sorry," I said, out of order. His smile didn't move, but his eyes did, wide, unblinking, fixed on mine longer than felt human. Finally, he gave a slow nod and walked out without another word. I exhaled, thinking I'd just avoided a weird encounter. But then the knocking started. 3 sharp raps from the bathroom door at the far end of the station. I froze. The man had left. I hadn't given him the key. No one else was inside. The knocks came again, harder this time. I wanted to call Carl, but the thought of turning my back on that door made my skin crawl. So I waited. Minutes dragged by, then silence. When I finally got the courage to check, the bathroom was dark, empty, door still locked from the outside. That was the first time I felt it. Like Redwood wasn't just a gas station. It was a trap, a place sitting on the thin line between our world and something else. And the rules weren't a joke. They were warnings. By the second week, I had settled into a routine. I could recite every shelf, every product code, every creak in the floorboards. The night shift felt almost normal. Almost. Until pump 3. It was 2:45 a.m., the dead zone according to rule number 1. I was stocking the snack shelves when I noticed a car pull up. Not unusual, except it was a black sedan with tinted windows, and the driver wasn't moving. The engine was running, headlights off, like it was watching. Then I saw him. A man in a black hat, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face half hidden in shadow. He didn't move, didn't blink, but he was standing at pump 3. Just standing. I remembered the rule. My stomach dropped. Carl's words echoed, "If you see a man in a black hat at pump 3, lock the doors and hide." I didn't hesitate. I bolted behind the counter, slammed the lock, and ducked under the register. From my hiding spot, I watched the man. He didn't flinch when the lights flickered. He didn't move when a crow cawed outside. He just waited for 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. No sound, no car, nothing. Just the emptiness of the night creeping through the station. I sat there shaking for hours, unable to move. My hands were trembling, my ears ringing. I didn't leave until my shift ended, and even then, the highway outside seemed darker than ever. Then phone. A week later, it was the phone. Just after 1 a.m., the line rang once. I ignored it. Then twice. 3 times. The rules said not to answer more than once. I didn't. By the 5th ring, the sound changed. Not a normal phone ring, but a distorted echo, like someone was screaming through the receiver. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else. I covered the handset with a rag. The ringing stopped. For a moment, I thought I was safe. Then I heard a whisper, low and raspy, coming from inside the walls. "Red. Wood." I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. The whisper grew louder, repeating the word over and over like a chant. And then it stopped. The station fell silent again. But I knew the quiet wasn't real. It was waiting. The first midnight customer. It was 3 nights later. I was alone stocking cigarettes when the door chimed. A man stepped in. He looked ordinary enough. Hoodie, jeans, a backpack slung over one shoulder. But something about him made my stomach knot. He approached the counter. "Hey, do you have—" He trailed off, glancing around nervously. I shook my head. "Sorry, we're out." He frowned. Something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation, fear, or maybe recognition. I didn't know what it was. Then he leaned in closer. I think you know me." My pulse jumped. I don't... Before I could finish, the lights flickered. The hum of the station twisted into a low growl, vibrating through the floor. The man's face blurred for a moment, like static on a broken TV. And then he wasn't there. I spun around, heart hammering, but the aisle was empty. Only the faint smell of gasoline lingered. The message. By this point, I had stopped keeping track of time. Every night felt the same. Endless hours, broken only by strange noises, shadows that shouldn't exist, and the occasional appearance of the black-hatted man or the whispering walls. Then came the note. It was taped to the register one morning, written in smudged white chalk. "You let him in." I didn't understand at first. Who? What? And then I remembered the last midnight customer, and my fear turned to horror. Somehow, I had done something I wasn't aware of. The words weren't finished. Beneath them, another line formed slowly, like the chalk was writing itself. "He's coming back. Bring others, or die." I dropped the note. My hands shook. The laminated rules burned in my pocket, every single one of them. Surviving the night. I didn't sleep that day. I didn't leave my apartment. I couldn't. At 11:55 p.m., I knew I had to face it again. The highway outside was empty, but the station loomed like a tomb. I walked through the shadowed parking lot, flashlight shaking in my grip. The door to the station opened before I reached it. I swear it knew I was coming. Inside, the black-hatted man was waiting. Not at pump 3, not outside. In the middle of the store, just standing, unmoving, staring at me. I remembered the rules, but instinct screamed at me, "Run." I didn't. "Why?" I whispered. No answer, only the low growl of the lights. The man raised a finger, pointed at the door. I understood. He wasn't human. He was an agent of Redwood, a collector, and now it wanted me to bring others. I realized then what the rules had meant. They weren't protection. They were instructions. Survival depended on obedience. The choice. I had two choices. 1, bring someone else to the station, to pump 3, to the black-hatted man, and survive another night. 2, refuse and accept what Redwood would do to me. The clock ticked past 2:30 a.m. The shadows of the night stretched across the floor like crawling fingers. The whispering began again, this time louder, echoing through the shelves, the walls, the ceiling. "Bring others, or die!" I froze. I couldn't move. Every step toward the door felt like wading through molasses. Then I heard the chime. The door opened. Someone was coming. The chime echoed through the station like a death bell. My legs felt frozen, but my mind screamed at me to act. Slowly, I turned toward the door. A young man stepped in, hoodie zipped up, earbuds dangling. He looked around nervously, innocent, unaware. My stomach dropped. I knew instantly he was the next one. "Hey," he said casually. I think I left my bag here last night. Can you help me?" The words were normal. The voice was normal, but the shadows twisting in the corners of the store, the faint static in the air, told me nothing about this night would be normal. I tried to speak, to warn him, but my throat locked. The black-hatted man shifted slightly, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. "Do it," he said. The words weren't spoken. They reverberated in my mind. "Bring him, the chase." I grabbed my flashlight, hands trembling, and gestured him toward the aisles. Yeah, the bag. Probably in the back." The young man followed cautiously. Every step he took seemed heavier than the last, though he hadn't even noticed the darkness bending around him. The lights flickered. The shelves groaned. Shadows stretched and twisted like living things. I could feel the black-hatted man behind me, observing, waiting. The whispers started again, soft at first. Bring others, then louder. Or die. I ran down the aisles, the students stumbling slightly behind me. My mind raced. Could I break the cycle? Could I survive without delivering someone else to Redwood? But the whispers weren't waiting for an answer. They were a command. The basement. I led him toward the storage basement. I had to. There was no other exit. The door groaned open, and the air smelled of mold and rust. The young man hesitated. Why are we going down here?" I swallowed hard. "Just storage. Bags down here." The shadows followed us, shapes moving along the walls, the whispers growing louder, desperate, insistent. Then I felt it, a cold hand brushing the back of my neck. I spun around. Nothing, just the darkness pressing closer. Suddenly, the black-hatted man appeared at the bottom of the stairs, impossibly tall, silent. His finger pointed toward the student. I realized then, I couldn't refuse. If I didn't, Redwood would take me tonight. The sacrifice. I turned toward the young man. My hands were shaking, sweat poured down my face. What's going on?" he asked. I swallowed, choking back bile. I can't explain. You need to leave. Run. Now. Before he could respond, the shadows surged. Dark shapes, pale faces with hollow eyes began emerging from the walls. They surrounded him, their hands outstretched, chalk dust drifting from their fingertips like snow in the dark. The black-hatted man stepped forward. I could feel his presence pressing against my chest, a force of gravity dragging me to my knees. I had no choice. I stepped back, letting the young man slip into the hands of the shadows. His scream echoed through the basement, then faded as the darkness swallowed him whole. The whispers ceased. Silence. Absolute silence. Survival. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. The black-hatted man was gone. The basement was empty. I had survived. I had obeyed. I had done what the rules demanded, but the cost weighed on me. The smell of chalk dust lingered in the air. The whispers, though gone, were now part of me, etched into my mind. I knew it wasn't over. It never ended. I would survive another night, maybe another year. But every midnight, every shadow, every creak of the floorboards would remind me of what I had done. Redwood wasn't a man. Not really. Not even the black-hatted figure. It was the station itself, the curse of the night, feeding on fear and obedience. And now, I was part of it. The cycle continues. Weeks later, I returned to the night shift. The station felt different, alive in a new way. I walked past Pump 3, past the aisles, past the basement door. I knew the rules now. I knew the signs. The black-hatted man never appeared again, but the whispers returned sometimes. Subtle, soft, almost comforting in a twisted way. Then one night, the door chimed. Another student, lost, innocent, unaware of the station's hunger. I sighed, my hands shaking, heart heavy. I knew what I had to do. You're looking for something?" I said, forcing a casual tone. "Come on, I can help you." As I led him toward the back, the shadows shifted, and I felt the familiar pull of the curse. The rules had not changed. The station demanded obedience, and I was now its collector. I would survive, but at the cost of another, and the cycle would continue forever.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Was it paranormal or just something we can't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember, never watch alone at night.